Savvy Practitioner is a series of programs designed with one thing in mind: to give you the tools you need to become a successful clinician entrepreneur. Today we're talking to Dr. Kristy Lewis, a naturopathic doctor who followed the Savvy Practitioner framework. Stay tuned to find out exactly what happened next. For over 16 years, Dr. Kristy Lewis has built her natural health practice in Ottawa, Canada's capital city. It's a story that's all too familiar for practitioners. Step by step, she built her practice on word of mouth and endless hours of hard work. And it wasn't long before she started having to make some difficult choices: family time or work, healthy life balance or work. And then came the burnout. And she knew something had to change. And that's what we're going to talk about today on Nutramedica. Welcome to Nutramedica, Dr. Kristy Lewis. It's lovely to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, Dr. Lewis, your practice in Ottawa exemplifies many of the transformational principles that we've been sort of digging into here on the Savvy Practitioner. And let's see, you've developed your niche, you've diversified your unique offering, and you've leveraged your time more profitably. So, before we get into how you accomplished all of that in your practice, let's go back and tell us about what was it like before. Paint a picture of your practice that triggered you on this journey of transformation.
Yeah, sure. So I think you captured it. I mean, you created an image, and I really felt seen in that. It really was, it really got to that point where, you're doing what you do until you can't do it anymore. And I think probably the biggest thing when I started practice is I didn't really have clear boundaries within the practice, right? So it was like between maybe spending that extra little bit of time with patients or not charging enough, maybe responding to that email. It all seems so, without consequence, until I became so busy that I really started to feel the impact on my health, on my relationships. And, I went from moving away from something that I absolutely loved. I mean, I chose to become a naturopathic doctor. I loved the experience. I loved being with patients. And then it became something that went from a beautiful opportunity and a blessing to almost a burden. And so, when that started to happen, I realized that something wasn't right. Like there was just no sustainability in what I was doing. And so I really, it was time for me to make a change. My body, my mind, my soul realized that there was, something not working with this model. And I realized that it was time to make a change and look at things differently.
So I just want to, drill down on one of the things that you said there, because, we bandy this word burnout. Oh, I'm so burned out, this kind of thing. But actually, that's not, like burnout is a real problem, right? You can't get out of bed in the morning. You feel dread, and you said, this is something that I love to do. This was my dream, to be a healthcare practitioner, and yet you're filled with dread with your day. And you also mentioned that, it costs you a relationship and costs you your health. If it's not being too personal, if you could just tell us a little bit about the reality of that, because I know that, the practitioners watching are probably thinking, well, I'm kind of tired, but that goes with the territory. And yeah, I'm feeling a bit burned out, but that goes with the territory. And what I want to do is to say, no, this has real world consequences for your health and your well-being.
Well, I think probably the biggest thing was when I started to realize the very thing that I truly wanted to offer the people that I was seeing, the patients that were walking through the door, was the very thing I wasn't able to give myself. And so I think it really was recognizing that it sort of became the mantra a little bit as to what I've carried into practice today, which is, sort of what is the obstacles here? Why am I experiencing this? And yeah, I mean, when your whole life really is evolving around work and your identity as your professional life, then that doesn't leave a lot of room for, for balance. It doesn't leave a lot of room for your values. So I was very fortunate to have my daughter. She was really such a beautiful addition to my life. And yet I would find myself at the end of the day too tired to connect with her, or agitated with my family. And I could see it in them, them looking at me saying, you're sort of giving everything to everyone else. You're giving everything. And it was just truly not living in alignment with your values. And I think that's a huge aspect of burnout. I mean, burnout has an absolute a physical manifestation. I mean, we as naturopathic doctors, that's our jam. That's what we do so well. We are able to look at the functional impact and the pathophysiology of a body in a state of cortisol resistance or overload when you're doing more than you're receiving. I really think there was a huge mindset shift that had to happen. It really had to, I use that word boundaries. I started with that, in reflecting for today, and what I wanted to share with the people listening was really that recognition of knowing that what we offer is so profound and so impactful and so needed that we do not have to compromise ourself, our relationships, and our own health as part of the journey. And I think that piece for me really was something that I had to heal as part of my process and my ability to get clarity on what my next steps were in my professional life.
All right. Well, why don't we start with that, the next step. So where exactly, did you start? What was the first thing that was the beginning of this restructuring of your practice?
I think it was the pause. Like so many great thinkers, great philosophers, great psychologists. We all know that it really so often is in the pause. There was a little bit of, again, necessity because I was physically struggling, and that picture of dread would be very much what I would feel, and also this feeling like I was doing something wrong, like having this isn't what's wrong, what am I doing? I'm trying to do all the right things, and yet I wasn't getting any return on those investments, in my own physical health and certainly in my own lifestyle. So I think a big part of it was I paused. And so what I mean by that is I was in a situation, and I think there's a lot of practitioners out there. So I do want to share this point. I mean, when you leave this program, many of us are in big debt. Like that's the reality. We don't walk into a model of health care where you're able to quickly pay off your debts. You're able to quickly move into a financial situation where you can be thriving. That is a reality for many of us. And so there was a sort of recognition of how do I take pause while at the same time take care of sort of some of the basics within practice. And so, one of the things that people often say is, well, we'll take a break or just relax. And I think as practitioners, sometimes we feel missed in that because maybe we don't feel like we actually have that choice because, we have things, student loans to pay back and things like that. So I definitely feel like it was about working such a, often used phrase, but working smarter, not harder. And I needed to sort of stop what I was currently doing. So, let go of the used to, so I could create room for something new for myself.
So how did you do that? Did you send out an email to your patients and saying, I'm taking some time off, or what did you do?
No, I just did, right? So what is the best, boundary is action plan, right? So I just did. I started to streamline. First of all, I worked reflectively. So I would carve out time every morning. So I would take 20, 30 minutes. And I realized that this was something that wasn't going to change overnight. So it was small steps, every single day, moving me in a direction, but I needed clarity on what that direction was going to look like. And so that really was me working backwards. It was saying, what kind of day do I want? What kind of people do I want to see in my practice? What kind of money do I feel like this is, value? What is the value of what I'm offering? I also, because we are clinicians, we are incredible doctors, we are also business owners. Anyone who's in private practice is an entrepreneur. And so what I had to do is get really intimate with my numbers. I had to see, where was I spending money? Where was I making money? What was my profit? How much was my time? How much time was I currently using? So I think it was about clarity, both from what did I want my clinical life to look like, or what did I want my practice to look like? And then also, what did I want the business model to look like? So it really was reflecting and then slowly putting that into action. So certainly reducing or changing the aspect of my hours and making sure that I was doing the time for service that made sense given what was going on, and also making sure that I wasn't spending all kinds of extra time that wasn't getting value for.
I know that you worked quite a bit with Dr. Megan Walker. And in fact, you worked with her at the beginning of her journey into the clinician business labs. And I'm sure that, working together with you helped her formulate her programs. So talk a little bit about that. How did you connect with Megan Walker, and what impact did her transformational model of care delivery have on you? And how much did it play into sort of how you moved forward?
Well, I really think, Megan's been so wonderful for our profession. She's always looking outside the box. She's always looking at, what's not working for the practitioner, and also what's not working for the model, what's not working for the patient. And so, as someone who was not only conceptualizing that or recognizing the problem, but also coming up with a solution, I've had my eye on her and what she was doing, just because she is such a revolutionary person in our profession. So It really was the question of reaching out and being able to, at that point, she had just launched the First 18. And I was actually at the point where she was in her career where she was able to see me in a one-on-one setting. And so really starting to look at all the aspects that I know she shared through this, this program with you, and, sort of putting some of that into practice. So really coaching me, right? Coaching me with the things I did not know, coaching me with the things that I did not know what was possible. And then even looking at some of those mindset and sort of, again, so often we're doing the same thing that it's hard to see that there's even another possibility for practice.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to sort of go through step by step through the process for our viewers. Because we've had 9 or 10 Savvy Practitioner programs, and they've each covered off a very particular area that people need to focus on. So maybe you'll just bear with me as I go through this. One of the key ideas is to niche your business. Is to stop being a jack of all trades, if you will, and offering everything to everybody, and really figuring out where your passion, where your expertise lies, and focusing that niche down. Can you tell me about the process you went through there?
Yeah, I did find that one a little bit tricky when I came up to that one, because I do believe that to be true. I do think that's very important in the branding process. You want to be able to differentiate yourself, and how you differentiate yourself, within your brand is really how your offering is unique, and to create context, so you're creating the offering, but also help people see, where that fits for them. Right. For me, looking at the practice and saying, okay, do I want to work with a modality? Do I want to work with one aspect of naturopathic medicine? That didn't quite feel right. Or did I want to work with just one population, fertility or weight management? That didn't quite feel right either. But then I leaned into, again, in this process of really taking time every morning, and leaning into what I loved doing and where I felt like I was having the greatest impact. It became very clear to me that I wanted to answer that question, that I talked about earlier on, is, what keeps us from making those choices that are in alignment with being our best selves? And looking at it, from a naturopathic phrase is obstacle to cure. So in naturopathic medicine, we would often talk, what are the obstacles to cure? Is it a physical, in a functionality or pathophysiology? Is it biome? Is it cortisol? Is it endocrine? And so having that knowledge really differentiated us, being able to look at the human body in that way and understand, choices we may make relative to what's out of balance in the body. The other aspect that I looked at is, what's going on with regards to, our mindset and the choices that we make, the behaviors. Is this coming from a wound or informed trauma base? So once I was able to understand what I was doing really well, where I was making impact, it sort of came to me, when I came to the lifestyle medicine brand. So the niche for me is a little bit less about who I work with or what tools I use, and more how I approach each and every patient. And that really has been a jumpstart for other things like how I, everything I do in my business model, whether it's I take a course, whether I, do a new offering, all is in that context of how does that fit within my brand, my consistency, and my offering, which is that lifestyle medicine component.
That's great, and I really thank you for that answer, because we can get an understanding about how your values combined with your passion, enabled you to find that niche. It wasn't something that you were bolting on from the side. And, I work with clients and individual entrepreneurs and practitioners. And, this idea of finding a niche is not bolting something on from the side. It has to come from within you. Everything comes from within you. And if you allow it to be an authentic expression of where your passion lies, then you will fly.
Yeah, and I can speak to that because I didn't do that at one point, right? So we learn from our lessons. We learn from mistakes. We cannot be fearful of failure if we're going to make a change. And when I first started to look at this, that's exactly what it was. It was a very much a should. Well, I'm a mom, and moms are burnt out, so that will be my target group. I will tell you that moved me away from my center. Partly because it very much wasn't, I love working with that demographic, but it felt forced. And, the other side of it was it was a side gig. It wasn't an enhancement of what I was already doing. So when lifestyle medicine came to be, when I launched the In-Between podcast visits, when I started groups, it was organic, it was evolutionary, and it came with ease. So those pieces, it's a knowing. And that's why I think the pause is so key, because when we need the pause to find the clarity.
Absolutely. And, in so many things in life, like just take a minute, check in with how you're feeling, and your body will tell you. I do love that. It's a great segue into my next question for you with we talk a lot in the Savvy Practitioner about diversifying your offering. So finding different ways to communicate and deliver service, right? And I know that you've been just fantastic at that. So tell us, how did you start to do that? Tell us about the podcast. Tell us about, that whole process of figuring out what you wanted to say and then choosing the channels in which to say it.
I think that's just it. I spent the time to understand my why. I spent that time to spend, the what the messaging was. The how I did it became less important. So whether I decided to write a book or whether I decided the podcast, I think it's once you have your messaging, your contact, your voice, and the courage to then be out there is, I think there's definitely different forums. For example, I prefer to do audio over video. I prefer, even how I write is how I speak. So it felt very organic and natural that a podcast would make the most sense. So I think it really became about what resonated with me, but the I'm going to start a podcast was actually not. The podcast came after I started to realize what my message was and what I wanted to offer to the world, what my purpose was as a naturopathic doctor.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take an opportunity right now to just highlight an upcoming show, an event that Nutramedica is going to be producing for you as part of the Savvy Practitioner series. We're going to be doing a live workshop, not only with Dr. Kristy Lewis, but also, of course, with Dr. Megan Walker and myself. And we're going to be taking you through a live workshop where you will have an opportunity to really figure out your why, what you offer people, what makes you different, and why people should care. And you will come out of that workshop with a one-pager that gives you all of the messaging that you need to proceed along this transformational path that we've been talking about. And from that, you'll be able to decide, do I want to do videos? Do I want to up my social game? Do I want to do podcasts? How do I want to increase and amplify my impact? So do keep an eye out for that. It'll be a Savvy Practitioner brand workshop. We're wrapping it up under the brand moniker, but so you all understand, it's really about helping you along this process. And you'll be able to work hand in hand with myself, with Dr. Megan Walker, and with Dr. Kristy Lewis to help you get to where you need to go. So thank you for that. Okay, let's move along now. Let's talk a little bit about marketing because, many people who are practitioners, they come to me and they say, this is all very great, but I hate marketing. So maybe you could talk to us about how you made peace with marketing and how did you use it as an engine for your practice? And then I have a follow-up question for you, but let's start right there.
I think for me, I think the big thing for me is realizing is working with that warm market. So what I mean by that is I always feel much more confident. I always am excited when I am putting an offering out, when I'm sharing something to people who I know are interested, who care, who know me, who know my messages. So, and quite frankly, I have found the conversions much higher on that. So, meaning, when I send a newsletter out to the people in my community, the people who have I've seen over the last 15 years, it really is about them wanting to get a message from me, wanting to click open because it's something that they're interested, something that I have already established a relationship with. So I think that's been really key for me. That's been a differentiating point for me. So whatever I choose to do, I try to be incredibly consistent with. So consistent with the timing, the messaging, and also the branding. So I plan out all of my marketing so that I look at it literally as a part of my overall, business plan, and I look at it that it is a necessary part in order for me to do what I love. And I don't try to, take too much personal, side of it. It's the thing I do. It's the thing I love. And I try to really separate the kind of concept of this is what allows me to keep what I do in motion. I also feel the big shift for me is realizing people want to hear from me. So it's, when you talk about getting over that fear, is realizing that, there is people that value the message, especially my intent. So before I write a social media post, before I write a newsletter, I always think about, is this in line with my brand? And is there context here? So how is a person going to feel a relatability? I am big on creating relations. So I don't want anything in my practice, whether it be my marketing or any of my offerings, to be transactional. It's really important that it's relational. So being able to be consistent with that messaging has been probably the biggest thing, and doing one thing very well as opposed to being sort of in multiple places and being inconsistent with that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the first thing is to make sure you're being authentic, right? The second thing is to make sure that the content of your marketing is of value, because every time you give a valued message, you're continuing to build on a relationship of trust. And that's what the process is all about. And then the last one, which I'm so glad you mentioned, was consistency. If you're sending it out on the first Thursday of the month, make sure you send it out on the first Thursday of the month. If you're doing a Funny Friday social post, make sure you do a Funny Friday social post. I love that. Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you this, because in a previous interview, you did mention this sort of just as a little sidebar, and I was kind of interested in it. And that is, okay, so now you're starting to market yourself, you're raising your profile in social and in the community, and that increases your personal exposure. So, and I know that there's two sides of that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. I think it's about those boundaries, right? I think it's recognizing when you have a message and you have an offering that can be your life's work. I think many naturopathic doctors, I can speak to that as a profession. We love what we do. We actively chose this path, and it is a big part of our identity. It is a big part of how we see ourselves and see our place in the world. I do think there is that recognition around potentially what your own sort of your own comfort is with that. How much exposure do you want? One of the things I know we talked about, which I really appreciated, was that sort of vulnerability piece. So that one's been tricky because, when you put yourself out there, even in a professional setting, there is always that opportunity for criticism. There's always that opportunity for, people who maybe don't agree. And so I think, having, again, that true knowing, that true sense of self, true intention, that is often where I can always land back to. So if something is not well received or misunderstood, or maybe criticized, I can always go back to my why, and I can always know that my intention is clear, and that is what absolutely helps keep me grounded in this very public space at times. For many people, when it comes to media, I mean, that's completely different. When I started, 16, 17 years ago, there was no Instagram, right? There was no, so it really is, again, finding what your comforts are, but at the same time, knowing what your own personal message is and staying true to that.
Yeah. Am I reading through the lines, between the lines, when I say that it is important to separate your personal from your professional, and understand that in the professional marketing realm, you will sometimes get negative feedback, and sometimes you'll get out and out nasty comments, and to not take them personally, to resist the incredibly strong urge to go in there and give them a piece of your mind, right? That takes discipline.
Well, absolutely. And I think we are in a unique position, because what we are offering is what we're offering, what our goods are in this is service, right? What so there is that piece of heightened vulnerability, or bigger impact in the face of criticism, because you are so close to the very thing that you're sharing about, that you're the very thing that you're hoping others will, lean and want more of from you. So
Yes.
it is definitely taken me time to, I think that's where the courage piece comes in, right? Because so many people, I think, around the marketing stuff it really does feel, that it's too over, like there's too much overexposure. And the other criticism I hear, the other challenge I hear, is that it takes a lot of time. And so I think that's where understanding where you're spending your time and why you're spending your time in that, and then being consistent, is creating that separation. So for example, I will use apps. I have, calendars. I know what my marketing plans are from now until December 22, what podcast, when. So I will spend that time at the beginning, of a quarter, so that I can, again, have that clarity. And then it does create a little bit of distance, because it's all planned out, and I'm not feeling, that it is immersed in my day, but it is part of how I can stay, successful and busy. So I really think it is keeping those two things, in check in your own brain, really.
Yeah, I love this idea of planning ahead, setting out a calendar as a way of kind of stepping out, in a way, of the hurly-burly of the moment, where our emotions can sometimes get triggered. Let me ask you one more question about the marketing. Have you used a marketing agency to help you with? How do you execute? Because I know that we're all busy people, and the execution part is often difficult. So what have you done to make that easier and to access the talent you need to do it well?
Yeah, I really think it's about finding your team, right? So we want to be able to collaborate within the community, collaborate, within a marketing model, being able to collaborate. I have a sponsorship with Cardish Health Foods here in Ottawa. They have 8 stores. They have a 60,000 mailing list. So it is about, collaborating. We have credibility, we as naturopathic doctors, have a lot to offer. And so collaborating with like-minded businesses is very important. Being on working together in those ways to increase exposure. And then in your own personal, obviously everything has an expense. So we want to, everything I do comes with a mini business plan. So if I'm going to roll out something within a marketing strategy, because at the end of what I'm trying to do is to promote a new group offering, then I need to understand, well, how much is my graphic designer going to be? How much is my copy going to be? What is my legal aspects going to be? And what is my web design going to be? And where and how many seats do I have to sell before I'm going to have a return on that investment? And so I really think we want to look at things from that perspective, so that when we are rallying our team together, so we cannot do everything well, that we are realizing, first of all, that potentially there is income, or there is room within the margins to give some things away so we can do what we do very well, and have more time for our billable hours. And then also, if there's areas where maybe we're overspending and we're not seeing that return on investment, so therefore, it's not the right thing for our business at that time. So I think that's potentially a gap within the naturopathic business model, which is this recognition of our return on investments and where our what our true profitability is with really all aspects of our business.
And I love that we've finished on the marketing piece with understanding that every piece of marketing, marketing is a core function of a core piece of your business, and you need to understand what your ROI is, right? And we did actually start our chat today with you talking about how you sat down and you not only plan out your day, but you plan out the hours of your day and where you're going to spend those, so you can make sure that you are getting an ROI and getting the kind of money back, the revenue back in, to make the whole thing work, right? So maybe you could just touch on that for one little second. So you're in the process of transforming your business. You're starting to be less stressed and have more impact. How did that affect your fee structure? How did tell us about that piece, because I think that must be quite exciting when things start to ease up, right?
Yeah, do less and reduce work and make more money. Yeah, that's a good feeling. I think a big part of that was really, basic, that's about supply and demand, right? So because I in part of the process from burnout to where I am now, is it really was about being more clear about my time. So I think when we think about fee structure, we want to think about it, yes, what am I charging per hour? But also there's another aspect, which how much time am I spending, right? So, a great example would be, I went from an hour and a half new patient time I reduced that to an hour. But again, because of the supply and demand and the request for my services, I was also able to increase that hourly rate. So, you can work with your numbers in a few ways where it is about charging more. Maybe you don't charge more, but you give a little bit less time. So I think, that's the other thing is, yes, we have our very clear billable hours. When I'm forecasting, I know how many patients per week I would like to see in a one-on-one setting, how many groups I want to run annually. So I really understand that those numbers, but I also want to look at, within that, how much time is non-billable, so that I'm able to, with my price points and my time with patients, be able to ensure that I'm not always working for free, that, those non-billable hours are part of or really built into what I'm actually generating with my service fees.
And you just touched on, this idea of groups. And one of the things I love about groups is that it does two things. One is that it enables you to offer your services at a reduced rate, and so therefore increase your impact with people who may not be able to afford you at your full rate. But at the same time, you're also able to maximize your revenue because you have a group of 6 people or whatever the size is. So I think that's definitely something that everyone should look into in terms of.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Having kind of, looked at many different things over the last 4 to 5 years, that has been my most successful business, the business model that I've shifted towards. The other thing it can do, the third thing it can do, is it can create an opportunity for patients who are sitting on wait lists to come in sooner. So it's not only, it keeps the momentum going. So unfortunately, when you don't have momentum with this type of care, again, that's where the whole in between visits, branding came in, was really what is missing in the patient's user experience is the ability to connect in between. So whether that's the free offering, which is the podcast, or someone wants to do a weekly group, there is that recognition of being able to have those touch points, which I believe is so important when we're looking at behavior modification. So it allows a gap in care. It's not only a good financial decision as a practitioner, it makes sense for the patient. One of the things I will definitely say within the context of that is it did take me time. So if you're a new grad and, I would say where I am getting the return on it, that being a successful model is, again, with my warm market. It is because I am now booking new patients into 2022. So it is a way for people to access me before they would potentially have to wait into down the road.
Yeah. So great. And you touched on there this idea that it enables patients to get in to see you sooner. So why don't we talk a little bit about the experience now from your patient's point of view? Up until now, we've spoken largely from your own point of view, but clearly we're in this business so that we can serve. So tell us, what is the feedback that you've had from your patients as you've gone through this transition? I'm sure there must be positive and maybe less than positive sometimes too.
Yeah. Well, I really think, I think there's a, people know what to expect, I think there's definitely, at the end of the day, a customer experience or a patient experience that is familiar. I think that how I approach my business model, and also how I process my time with patient, there's actually quite a bit of overlap in both of those things. There is that recognition of clarity within the messaging. So I think patients seem quite happy. I think there's a sense of with what I'm offering when I show up, how I'm with them. I've had to definitely in that sort of come full circle with the boundary piece. I've had to manage expectations. I've had to learn how to say no. I've had to create definitely a buffer between myself and patients. So anyone who is not working with any sort of assistant or virtual assistant, I think it's a really important first step, even if it's just a few hours a week, because it's very, very important to create that distance between yourself as the doctor and yourself as the admin or business person. So I think, not everyone loves that they don't have access to me, like maybe they did in the early days. But I think definitely people have adapted, and, with boundaries, you set them and then you follow through with them, and people do adapt. And the people who have, had a positive and enjoy that, then that seems to be, working for them. And on my side, I think that I come to practice every day, brighter, clearer, more present, more in alignment. So this is a journey. This journey of, I'll speak to my own, but I definitely have many colleagues and friends. You're going through so much of your own personal transformation. I think about the person I was even 10 years ago to the person I am today, over and above, what my roles are in this world, wife or mother or doctor. And I think as I have evolved and work through some of my own core issues, potentially around understanding values, boundaries, looking at where I see my own worthiness, that has shown up in my professional experience. And also then I'm able to be an empath, and I can hold space in a different way.
Wonderful. So why don't we end our time today with sort of a word to the wise, if you will. You yourself has been through this transformative journey. You continue to transform. You continue to blossom, learn new ways of building your business and maximizing your impact. Learning how to take patients on a journey. And the journey is not always just about seeing you one-on-one. They can be part of groups. They can read your blog. They can listen to you on a podcast. There's all sorts of ways that people can interact with you, which I think is so important. If you were to think about, the top 3 steps that you as a practitioner right now who might be listening to this show and feeling overwhelmed and saying, I'm that person, I am feeling burned out. Give us, what's the first 3 things that they can do to start this journey from your point of view?
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a while since I got emotional here. I think because I don't think I got that message, right? And so I really hope wherever you are in your journey right now, I really think it's so important to really value yourself, value this medicine. Like, it's what we are doing is incredible and so needed. You do not need to compensate. You do not need to, you be less than anything. You are needed, and we all need to stay well in order to do this and have the rippling effect that we as naturopathic doctors are creating, really around our communities, our country. Like, there's such a rippling effect, and people are so in need and wanting this. So value yourself, set your boundaries, and do it in a way that you can sustain it. Do it in a way that is about, where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? Where do I want to be in 15 years? It's a long haul. It's an incredible journey, but it's definitely a long haul. And I would say, within that, always go inward. So the times I've been the most lost in my career is when I'm outward, when I'm looking at what is going on, what should I be doing, right? What's this program I should be doing? Should I start this? When I lose that center, that internal knowing, it's time to take pause. When I can feel myself, looking outward, it's time to pause and just go back to your knowing, back to your writing, back to your breathing, back to your sense of self, back to inner connection, because it is there. And I would say the last thing would be, to be patient. Like, you're not doing anything wrong, right? So many times in my career, I felt like even now, there are times where I wake up and I think I must be doing this wrong. We are forging a new way. If it feels hard, it's because it's new. You're creating something incredible. And turn to the people in your community. Come email me, call me. I will give you my things. Like, I don't want people to be, feeling like they have to recreate the wheel. We are a community. We can come together. This is an opportunity for us to work together at such a pivotal time in our profession, with such beautiful offerings and such an important aspect to offer to people.
Dr. Kristy Lewis, I really, really appreciate your time today. I know how busy you are, but you've shared so much wisdom of your own journey, and I know that our viewers today are going to be deeply, deeply appreciative of that. So we'll see you next time on Nutramedica, okay?
It's always a great experience. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's program on how to embrace the successful clinician entrepreneur within you. Now, don't forget that you can access all the Savvy Practitioner programs at any time right here on Nutramedica. Now, here we share the insight and experience of expert natural health clinicians every day. And today's interview with Dr. Kristy Lewis was no exception. Please let us know if you liked the video. Leave us some comments. We always appreciate your feedback. So on behalf of the entire Nutramedica team, thanks for watching today, and we'll see you next time.